so here we are the next day. The saga continues. What I'm going to do today is try and fit this bumper surround back on. I'm actually going to try and do that without removing the front end. I'll remove the front end another time to look at things like the free spool and put some spacers onto the bracket that mounts the control box and a few other things that require the front end taking off. But I've realised that with the headlights out, I can actually quite easily access the screw holes here. I can get to all of those by just reaching in, and then down here there are 4 screw holes. So there's one there and there's one there, and there's also was one here and one here. It's hidden behind here. Now those 2 studs on the front end here, those 2 there, will need to be removed, okay, because they will just not be able to go in because the Fairlead's there. So I will take those off, and then these here I can actually quite easily get to those by just reaching down inside. Okay, so I can just reach down and get to those quite easily. So there's no real need to actually remove the front end. It's a lot of work to undo all the various bolts. I've got to take the sump guard off, get the car up on ramps, take the spats and all the various bolts, screws and bolts underneath, and then in here I've got to undo, take the wheel arch liners out. There's a lot of extra work just to remove the front bumper. So I'm going to try and do this without removing all of those things, without removing the front end, and just see if it's even possible. So what I've done, I've removed the hook. Okay, so there's the hook. I've removed my number plate, my long number plate. Okay, and then when the surround is fitted, I will be looking at fitting my white square number plate. Okay, so that will be over here somewhere. So the long number plate that was underneath the Fairlead can't be refitted because I want to be able to eventually hook the hook onto my towing eye underneath, which would mean the rope goes across the number plate and obscures the letters and numbers on the number plate. So that's not legal. So number plate can't go there. It's got to be an offset square one. I'll fit that last after the bumper surround is put on, but for now I've taken the hook off, I've taken the number plate off, and what I'm going to do is try and offer this up and actually try and work out where I need to make the holes. I've made one little tiny pilot hole that you can see there, but I need to cut a slot this sort of shape in the bumper surround, and I also need to make 2 holes here. Now what I'm going to be doing is actually fitting a double Fairlead, double hawse Fairlead. Okay, so this one will stay here, and then there'll be a second one on the outside of the bumper surround. That way that this one acts almost like a spacer, because there's a gap between the bumper surround and the factory bumper, and it just happens to be exactly this thickness, which is quite convenient. So that will stay there, and I'll use some longer bolts to go through. Now when I try to sort of offer this up, this one's going to be loose and falling about, so what I'll need to do is probably stick the bolt through, turn this around so that this recess is the other way around, and just stick a nut in there, not tight but just enough to retain it, and then tighten the whole lot up once the bumper surround's on. That's the idea. Okay, so I'll put the camera on the tripod and set about trying to do this. Now I'm just going to take some measurements here. This will be useful to anybody who's fitting a winch themselves with just the factory bumper. I've made a bit of a mess of these holes here. I made them in the wrong place and had to enlarge them. So to save you making the same mistake, I will measure where you need to make the holes so that you can drill in exactly the right place. So first things first, the actual threaded hole there is about 15 millimeters down from this very edge where it starts to sort of roll around the edge there. Okay, so from the lower edge it's about 15, and then from the center line there all the way up to level with this sort of joint between silver and the dark grey there is about 30 millimeters. Okay, so 15 millimeters up to there, and then another 15 to bring it sort of level with that point there. Okay, obviously the same on this side. Distance between the two Fairlead bolt hole centre lines should be a standard, okay, between winches. It is 255 millimeters. Okay, so 255 millimeters from there to there, and then 15 millimeters down. You make a 10 millimeter hole there. From there, you'll pick up the metal standoffs between the winch tray and the bumper, which I have to add are rusting quite quickly. This one over here is looking decidedly rusty. Muddy mods. You might want to consider stainless steel or painting them, because these have only been on a couple of weeks and they are both rusty, which is a shame. Okay, the hole here, the letterbox shaped hole that I've made for the actual rope to come out of, is 205 millimeters long and 30 millimeters tall. Okay, you could probably get away with something slightly bigger or slightly smaller. It all depends what type of Fairlead you're using. If that hole was a bit longer and a bit taller, it would all be hidden nicely by the Fairlead. When that is actually fitted, and this is obviously for a Rhino Fairlead, other makes of winch may have a different type of Fairlead. It could be a roller Fairlead with a cable, or it could be a hawse Fairlead like this, but just a different shape. On this one, it sticks up a bit here, and most of the other ones I've seen are similar. However, yours may be different. Okay, so don't just go on how much it's sticking up above the bumper. Okay, so there's that one, and the distance that is sticking up above there is sort of, yeah, it's about 10 millimeters. Actually a bit more than that, probably about 12 millimeters. About 12 millimeters, but other brands of winch may be a slightly different shape, you see. So the thing to go on really is the bolt positions and the centering. Okay, so now that I've got those measurements, I can mark up the position to cut on here. Just to be really sure, what I'm going to do is actually measure the distance relative to the parking sensor, because that is a sort of a good reference point to measure from. Anywhere else, it's just not really going to work, because this sort of tucks round above here by an unknown amount. So by measuring out from the parking sensors along and up the distance from this centre line to there, I'll be then able to make the holes here exactly the same, and I'll measure the distance between them, because I can't rely on this distance here, you see, because this goes round over the top of the factory bumper. So that'll allow me to get the bolt holes in the right position, and then in between that I can then make the letterbox shaped cutout. So we're looking at about 170 millimeters from here along to vertical below there. Okay. And then it's difficult to get a dead horizontal because this is slightly curved, but if we go out to about here, 20mm up from this edge. Yeah. It's about 90mm. It's about 90. Okay, so that was 170. 170 and 90 should bring me pretty much in the right position. And what I'll do is I'll just drill a small pilot hole first and make sure that that is definitely in the right place. This one should be exactly the same. It is. Yeah, 170, 90. Let's try to mark this up then. So 170 along brings me to about there. And then if I get a line across between those and go 90 up, that brings me to about there. Okay, so this way. So there we go. I believe that's the position of the bolts for the Fairlead. I can tell that that's level as well because there's actually a sort of slight stain going across there from where the number plate was. Okay, and the distance between the Fairlead holes was 255mm. Okay, so I've got 260 there. So I'm just going to bring those in slightly. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I've just test fitted this, just put it into position loosely, and I just want to see if these are in the right place. Yep, that one's slightly to the right, but that's gone into the hole. That one is absolutely spot on. Okay, so that one's in exactly the right place. That one is close enough, it just needs enlarging slightly to the left. Okay, so now I'm going to use a multi-tool to remove these studs and their rubber pillars that they're positioned on. Right, there we go. Okay, so I've just offered that up. That's all gone on nicely, and we can see here the hole there for the Fairlead. That's a similar shape to the one in the factory bumper. These line up nicely with the cylindrical steel standoffs. So what I need to do now is remove this and attach both Fairleads to this. Okay, so one on the front, one on the back, with a nut on the bolt behind but not tightened up. So I need to be able to turn it to screw the whole thing in. I've also pulled out the parking sensors. That was quite difficult because I had to reach down inside, disconnect this plug, remove that without dropping it, which of course I did drop, and it ended up down in here. Managed to fish it out eventually by reaching down with a long pair of pliers down inside. This one here was even more difficult because the relay box couldn't really get my hand down in, so I sort of sent a cable tie down and did a sort of kind of fishing kind of thing, got the cable tie around it and pulled it back up and disconnected that. So those are there, they need putting into the back of this, and we're nearly there. Okay, so what I've done here, I've got some nice stainless steel longer M8 bolts with Allen head, and I've put some thick M8 washers, also marine grade stainless steel. Okay, so Muddy Mods, if you're watching, stainless steel bolts, these. It's really fiddly lining everything up. Okay, right, the bolts are plenty long enough, they're just the wrong size. I thought these were M8, looks like they're M10. Okay, I've bought the wrong size bolts. That's why that was going in and just refusing to thread. It was going in the hole. Okay, so next I'm going to look at this bumper surround here. What I'm trying to work out is the best way for a Fairlead to go in front and behind. Okay, because the gap between the bumper surround and the factory bumper here is the same as the thickness of one of these Rhino Fairleads. The advantage of putting a Fairlead on the inside of this as well is we've then got this nice smooth metal aperture here on the outside and the inside. Otherwise there's going to be a gap and there's going to be sort of sharp edges of plastic which the rope is going to catch on. There is a problem though, and that is that the holes don't line up. Okay, so for these holes here to line up, that needs to push that way. So I either need to cut this down, which I started trying to do, and it was a bit of a job really. It is aluminium, but it was just really going to be difficult to cut that down. Or I could actually cut a slot into here for that to stick through and just poke out the other side. Doesn't leave a lot of plastic here, which is why I didn't want to do it. But yeah, I suppose I could actually just take this up like that. Just trying to work out what that's going to look like on the outside. So we would have our Fairlead on the outside. Like so. And then the top of another one sitting immediately behind it. Yeah, I'm not really sure here. I'm not sure what's going to be best. I think it's just going to leave this plastic here very thin, but it will be sandwiched between two Fairleads, so it should actually be okay. Yeah. So if I was to cut along and then cut down like this, there really is no point having this little strip here. It just serves no purpose because it's going to be clamped up. Okay, so I'm going to cut out along here and then cut down to this corner and remove all of that. Okay, there it is. At last, that was a real game getting that on. This bolt here just didn't want to line up properly, but it's on now. And that is sitting nice and smooth. Looks a little bit unusual, but it means that we've got that nice, smooth metal surround all the way in. Okay, so it's a double Fairlead there. Just to take that rope without catching on anything. Okay, good. Right, I need to now remove the headlights, reach in and put the nuts on the back of these studs here, just to secure that properly. But yeah, I'm pleased with that. That looks good. Now, I do need to work out what I'm doing with the number plate. There are a couple of tiny holes here, but I don't wish to put the number plate onto this bumper surround. So once this is bolted on properly, I then need to work out how I'm going to fit my side mounted number plate on. So what I'm going to do is fit this square or rectangular number plate. They call it a square number plate. It's not actually a perfect square, but it's 2 rows of characters as opposed to 1 row like it used to be. So my original plan was to try and stick this kind of like here somewhere, but I just don't think that's going to really work. It's going to be very difficult to construct some kind of mounting post to put that on. This is going to be sticking out like that. That's no good. You can't bend the number plate. You're not allowed to wrap it around. Unfortunately, it can't be on a curve. It has to be a straight plane. It can be slightly angled, but it needs to be vertical like that. It can't be like that. So this is why I can't put it up on my roof rack up the top like a lot of people do, because that's sloping. Okay, so the rules say that it can be angled like that, but not like that. Okay, so you can't lean it back. Couldn't put, for example, a sticker or something on there or on the front of the bonnet. Just wouldn't be allowed. Jaguar E-types and Caterhams get away with it because they don't have anywhere else to put the number plate. There are exceptions that are made to old historic vehicles where a stick-on bonnet plate is the only possible way of doing it, but with this one I'm just not going to get away with it. Okay, so that can be angled slightly. The requirements are that a speed camera or a ANPR camera or a policeman in his car can clearly read the number plate from the front. Okay, so that can be angled slightly, but I just think that's going to be too difficult to try and mount like that. It's just not going to be very good really sticking out like that. So a better option would be to put it kind of here, probably not like that, because that's going to be covering up our Land Rover badge. There is a grille underneath which I need to be a bit careful of, but I think if that was maybe say like that, that actually fits quite nicely in there. Not too worried about it hanging down. Just need to be a little bit careful that it doesn't get caught when off-roading, but I think it looks better like that than like that. That's just going to be a bit odd with that sort of sharp edge sticking up. Hanging down like that, I can't see that getting caught really. That's still a long way above the sump guard, and it shouldn't also restrict the airflow too much through the intercooler at the bottom. The important thing is that I don't restrict the airflow anymore through the front grille here, because we've already blocked it up with a great big winch and control box. So yeah, so I don't want to sort of really sort of start covering that anymore. So that is where it's going to go. There is one big problem though with that, and that is the parking sensor. Okay, so I've just popped this out here. It has a kind of bezel thing. Now this is a bumper cover, but the standard factory parking sensors also have this kind of bezel there, and that has just I've pushed the parking sensor back in, pulled it out the bottom here, and then just pulled that bezel forwards out of the bumper surround. I'm not sure what to do with this. I don't really like the idea of trying to make a hole in the number plate and bring it through. It's just asking for trouble. It would have to be painted white, and it would have to be fitted absolutely flush with the number plate, otherwise it's going to cast shadows. You're not allowed a kind of like 3D numbers sticking up nowadays, so I would have thought a parking sensor sticking out from the number plate also won't be allowed. So if I'm not going to bring it through the number plate, then that hole just gets covered up, and the number plate and the parking sensor then either needs to be relocated, so I might be able to sort of bring that out to here or somewhere, or better still, just disconnected. Okay, so there are 4 parking sensors in total. I can run on the other 3. I can cope with having 3 sensors at the front. That will still tell me if there is a vehicle or a wall or something in front of my car. I don't see the need for this sensor at all, but the thing I'm not sure about is, can I just disconnect it? Will that cause an error? Will it actually cause the sensor to keep on beeping? So if the sensor does have to be connected, then I can't just sort of tape this up out the way somewhere. I can't even put it sort of here. It's going to reflect off the ground and then keep giving a false reading. So it could be just sort of put down like that maybe, but the number plate's going to hang down a bit, you see, so it needs a bit of thought. Now what I was thinking is, could I disconnect it and just actually wire like a resistance or something in there? And it's a 3-wire sensor, so from reading up on the web, it's positive, ground, and then the actual feedback signal wire. The resistance between each of these, so between ground and signal, and between signal and live, is about 40 kiloohms. So I'm thinking if I could actually put two resistors across here, then what would happen is the computer would think the sensor's there and it's working and it's transmitting, it's just not actually receiving back a sort of an echo. And it's an ultrasonic sensor, so the idea is that this transmits a sound wave, an inaudibly high pitched sound wave at a wall, and then detects the reflection, the echo coming back, and somehow converts that into a signal, and the control module, the computer or whatever it is, somewhere, parking sensor circuitry, works out if that means there's an object in front of the car or not. Okay, so what I need to do is to fool this one into thinking that the sensor's there, it's transmitting correctly, there's nothing in front, and then if there is something in front of the car, the other three will pick it up. Of course, if there was a bollard or a small child or somebody stood right here, then that won't get picked up. But that could happen with the standard sensors. You could have something right in the middle. I remember once bumping a post that was sort of a low bollard post that was in front of my car. It was right in the middle and the sensors didn't pick it up. Okay, so I just don't think it's going to really be any worse than it is with the three sensors. They're there to detect large objects like other vehicles, and when you're backing into a parking space or pulling into a parking space, forwards it detects the wall or whatever is at the other end of the space. That's the purpose of the sensors, really. It's to aid you when parking. Okay, so not to detect small objects that are in front of the vehicle. That's what the driver's eyes are for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and just turn the ignition on with no sensor at all and just see what happens. Just see if it throws some kind of error or beeps or whatever. Let's give that a go. Put that up there. And right, let's get the keys. Let's just see what happens. Oh. Now, there you go. That was flashing then. It's flashing. That must indicate an error. So let's just try starting the car. So if I go into okay, I haven't even put it into reverse yet, and there's a beep, a long beep. So let's just go into reverse. Yeah, you see it's not having it. Right, the sensors are just not working at all. Okay, so there's a long beep after starting and then that's it, you don't get any more beeps. So, okay, so that is what happens when one sensor is either missing or faulty. So we do need something on that connector. Now I've just found something interesting. I've got the ignition on. If I turn on the parking sensors, we get our beep because of this hedge here. If I then walk past, we can hear the beep, and that's being detected by this sensor here. If I crouch down, put that hard against, don't know if you can hear that over the whine of the throttle body, but if that is put really hard up against a surface, it's almost as if that sensor is then taken out of the equation, because whilst it's transmitting, it's not got any reflection, any echo to receive, because it's pushed hard against another surface. So if that was actually taped right up against the back of the number plate, we wouldn't have any faults, but this sensor just wouldn't actually get any echo signal back, and then we'd be running on the other three. That's the idea. So I'm going to attach the number plate now, and we'll test that out and see if it works. Okay, what I've done is I've measured it equidistant to get halfway from the top and the bottom, and then 25mm in from each side. Don't worry, this has a protective film, so that mark is only on the film, which will be peeled off after it's fitted. I've got some number plate fixing screws here. I don't know if they're stainless steel, I hope they're stainless steel. If they start to rust, then I will change them for stainless steel. They're not the security type. I don't actually want to fit those because I may well need to remove the number plate if I'm off-roading or something like that. So I'll just use these standard flat blade head screws with the white covers that go over, just to make that bolt head, make the bolt heads white so they can't be seen. Okay, I'm going to drill, I think these are 4mm screws, so I'll start off with a 3 and then go to a 4.5, and then on the car I'll just use the 3. So these are self-tapping, so they can then thread in to the front. So let's just hold that up and just get a feel for where these screws are going to go, just in case they're hitting the hole. So right, okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I don't really want to raise those up because then I start getting into the actual black of the numbers and letters, which causes all sorts of problems. So it's a little low there, but it'll do. It's going in about here and over here, so that's fine. I'll get drilling and we'll get that fixed on. This is actually a metal number plate. You can't get the plastic ones anymore, certainly not from Halfords. So it's actually a metal sheet. I think that's the new standard. The number plate rules keep on changing. If you're interested in knowing what's legal and what isn't, there's a great series of YouTube videos by GCM. It's the YouTuber GCM. I shall put up a quick thumbnail now of his channel, and he looks at all sorts. He actually gets a policeman to actually tell us what's legal and what's not. It's not just number plates, it's modifications, big exhausts, remaps, everything. So yeah, well worth a look. Really, really useful channel. Right, I now need to get the bigger drill in, enlarge those holes up a little bit, and then drill and attach it to the car. Okay, there we go. Come out a little tiny bit at the top. That's probably just where it's been tightened up and has bent out slightly. I think this is also slightly curved, so it's okay. It's on there, it's straight, it's easily visible, and most importantly of all, it's legal. So I'm going to turn my car around now and just see what that looks like from the front. I can't actually get in here because of this hedge, so I need to stand back and really get a proper view of that, see if it's straight, and just see if there's any other issues. Okay, so I've turned the car around. That all looks good. Quite pleased with that. That looks good. I'm trying to tell if it's absolutely straight or not. It looks straight, but it's very difficult to tell with all these curved surfaces here. But that along there is straight, which I think is the most important thing, because if that was not right, then you'd spot that straight away. Yeah, that looks vertical. The actual bumper surround is curved here. You can see that's why there's a little gap at the top there. That's fine, I can live with that. So what I need to do now is just tape that sensor up half behind the number plate and just see if the parking sensors actually work like that, with obviously with that one not contributing to the signal. But my theory is that if I put it hard against this, it won't receive an echo, so it won't actually do anything to mess up the signal. Okay, so what I've done is I've just taped that sensor to the back of the new number plate. I'm going to try and drive up to something now and see if the remaining 3 parking sensors can do the job without that one. Will they work, or will that one take over and think there's something really, really close to it and just be beeping? Okay, let's try this. Let's close up the boot. I'm going to try and drive up to that hedge over there and see what happens. Parking sensors on. Now it beeped once, which is normal. That's telling you that they're engaged. Let's just approach this. Hopefully this hedge is solid enough. Oh, there we go. It's working. So back up a bit. There we go. No problem at all. I'll try and find something a bit more solid now. Let's try these bins. Working. I think that's working perfectly. No issues with that at all. No issues with that at all. That's working perfectly. So that just goes to prove that if a parking sensor is taped up out of the way but has something immediately in front of it, then it doesn't do anything. It doesn't contribute to the actual parking distance. So if the parking sensor works attached to the back of the number plate with some tape, then I can't help thinking that it probably would also work in its original factory hole on the bumper, pressing hard against the back of the number plate in the correct normal position. I'm going to leave it there for this video, but in part 5 I'm going to try that and see if it works. I'll also be finishing off all the little odd jobs that need doing. I need to fit some wiring cradles, I need to improve the mounting of the relay box, and I might even spray the grille as well. Okay, I hope that video was useful. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the final part of this saga, part 5, coming soon. Thank you, bye. So I've tried to spray these bits orange with this enamel spray paint, and it's gone quite badly wrong. It's nothing like the colour of the cap. I mean, look at that. It's completely different. Okay, so that's going to go in the bin.